After completion of her service as a supplier of fresh water to Royal Navy warships, the Royal Fleet Auxiliary steamship Freshspring had ended up alongside the small dock at Newnham on the River Severn, just down from Gloucester. She represents the sole remaining steam-powered coastal-going vessel of the type that used to be so prevalent around the UK. Above deck, she was in pretty poor condition, and if just left there, she was in danger of just rusting away. Having been acquired by the Freshspring Society, a trust set up to save, preserve and then refurbish her, at Newnham, volunteers of the trust set about halting that situation by first of all carrying out minor repairs. We hear a bit about that down in the engine room.
Hello, I'm John Austin. I'm one of the trustees. Officially, I'm the trustee in charge of the refurbishment of the ship. What I'm doing here is, by profession, I'm an engineer, and I just want to save the machinery here. And this is eminently savable, and it's typical of the machinery going back to the start of the last century, maybe halfway through the earlier century. Well, at the moment, while we're raising funds for the full restoration, I daren't let anything tragic happen to the ship. In other words, I've got to keep the water in its right place. I've got to keep the river water, sea water out, and I've also got to stop rainwater percolating in. Over the years, percolating rainwater has caused quite a lot of damage around the ship. So we've now got it pretty well watertight, stabilised it.
The first phase of refurbishment was really just to halt the decline in the ship's condition. But in 2016, a plan was put in place to move her to a berth in Devon at Bideford, where major restoration work could be undertaken. As we have seen, the original triple expansion engine which drove the single screw propeller was still intact and could in fact be functioned by hand. But what about getting steam to that?
My name is Stephen Attenborough. We're in the boiler room of the SS Freshspring. The boiler here has 3 furnaces. Originally it was coal-fired, but was converted to oil in the 60s. Originally it was hand-fired from bunkers behind me and on the other side of the ship as well. So the coal would have been brought in along from the shore into big hoppers above the bunkers, and then would be just shovelled out by hand into the individual fires as required. These boilers in the main furnace tubes are very similar to the Cornish or Lancashire boilers with big corrugated tubes, and would originally have had a coal grate just the same as a stationary engine boiler.
Clearly, the boiler and furnaces were in no condition to be used, so she would have to be towed down to Devon. That journey would be in 2 stages. Stage 1 of the relocation would see her move to Sharpness docks further down the Severn, where she could go into dry dock for checking and, if necessary, repair prior to stage 2, which would be the longer journey down the coast to Bideford. Summer 2016 saw stage 1 set in motion. Prior to the move, there was much to be done, not least of which was to ensure that the anchors could be raised and, in the event of an emergency, dropped again. Originally, the winch for this was steam powered, but now this had to be done mandrolically. As most will know, the River Severn has a very low to high tide level, and so there was quite a small time window for the tug to get up to Newnham, attach the tow ropes, and then get Freshspring down to Sharpness. As the rising tide moves up the narrowing river, it creates the Severn bore, although at this time of the year that is not particularly dramatic. With the rising water level, the tug makes its way up to and alongside Freshspring. The tow rope is taken on board and made fast. Ropes are cast off and slowly, against the current still running up the river, the tug takes a strain and Freshspring starts to move downstream, beginning her first journey from Newnham, where she had been for the past 24 years. With the tide now turned and running down to the sea, the tug, Freshspring, and Riparian, which is being used to steer the aft end, are soon at Sharpness, and start a sort of dance to move against the fast-flowing current and manoeuvre around and into the harbour entrance. At the docks, a number of those involved with Freshspring are waiting to welcome her.
Well, my name's John Puddy and I'm the chairman of the Steam Ship Freshspring Society, and it's quite a momentous occasion today because it's the first time for 24 years that Freshspring has moved from her berth at Newnham on Severn. And so what we're doing now is we're taking her into Sharpness harbour in readiness to enter the dry dock in a couple of weeks' time. The aim of the Trust is to put Freshspring back into steaming condition, but we have to go through phases, and phase one is to prepare the ship to be safe as a static exhibit. So we've got funding at the moment to put the ship into the dry dock, carry out repairs to enable her to be towed to Bideford, and then she'll go down there for a static exhibit while we work on a major a major lottery bid. Well, we were very, very fortunate indeed that the Freshspring has been elevated to the core register of National Historic Ships. This means that she is one of the most important vessels in the country. Freshspring is really important because she represents the small coasting steamers that used to serve our country throughout more than 100 years. And they were all about this size, 120 foot, 200 to 300 tons. And they were the sort of what they used to call the dirty British collier, you know, and salt-caked smokestack. So Freshspring is the last remaining one of these vessels with the potential to go to sea again. Okay, once Freshspring's been through the dock and she's been repaired and painted, she'll be towed down to Bideford Quay in Devon, where that is her long-term permanent base. And for the next few years she'll be a static exhibit there, open to the public all of the time, and we'll have a team of volunteers who are already waiting to see her turn up to carry on with the restoration work.